For giving up some of your Friday evening to come to this meeting. It's terrific to see such a big turnout. I hope that it'll be terrific anyway, if the turnout is largely indicative of the support for this project that we've got. At the front here, we have an array of people who can help to progress this project of doing the A1307. Since I've been the MP for just under 4 years, one of the main things that gets raised with me on the doorstep and on the high street and wherever I go in Haverhill is the state of the A1307. It is probably the single biggest local issue that I get asked about. And for years there hasn't been a satisfactory solution. There have been small improvements. But in a sense, the fact that it goes from dual carriageway to single carriageway and back to dual carriageway several times adds its own difficulties. Haverhill is a growing town. We've grown over the past few decades and we're set to grow again. And there's broad support in the community for that growth. And with growth must come infrastructure. And when you look at a map of this part of England, and if you just plot the towns on that map and the dual carriageways, there is a great big hoop with the A14 at the top, and the A12 down the eastern side, and the A11 down the western side, and the Braintree dual carriageway in the south. And absolutely spot in the middle of that is Haverhill. Now, I think for many years, part of the problem has been that Haverhill ends where Suffolk ends and Cambridgeshire begins. But these sorts of bureaucratic boundaries, which have to be drawn at some point, shouldn't get in the way of planning decent infrastructure, especially for growing towns. And so I'm absolutely thrilled that here on the platform we have Graham Newman, who is in charge of transport in Suffolk and has come all the way from Felixstowe. We're very grateful for you giving up your Friday night. We've got Graham Nix from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough NET, which is very important. We've got Councillor Bates from Cambridgeshire County Council and Roger Hickford, who is the County Councillor who represents Linford, but also Linton, but also the District Councillor who represents Linton, and so obviously has a huge local interest in the project. And then me, who's the MP for Haverhill and the rest of West Suffolk. So bringing together Cambridgeshire and Suffolk in this way is the first step to trying to crack this problem. Anyway, so knowing that we need to make progress, with Roger also driving this agenda, it was striking. I called this meeting, and then since then a couple of things have happened. The first is that this Wednesday in the budget, money was announced for what's called the Cambridge City Deal, which is all about improving the infrastructure of Cambridge to allow it to cope with this enormous growth that it's having based on the international reputation of its brilliant R&D, which is growing faster and faster, and there's more and more demand, and it's an extremely exciting development in this part of England, and there are increasingly more and more high-value jobs in Cambridge, and of course the spillover of that here in Haverhill with the science park. It just reinforces how important that link is, but it also reinforces why it is good value for money, in my view, to sort out the A1307. I've long been in favour of a dual carriageway all the way from here to the A11. That is my goal. If we have to achieve it in parts, that would be fine. It would be nice to have a railway as well, but I put the short-term and medium-term emphasis on the road. It is a project that has my full backing. The question of where it goes, the question of when it happens, the question of who pays for it and how are all very important questions that need to be addressed. But one of the crucial things is to demonstrate the support in Haverhill for this absolutely critical piece of infrastructure, for making sure the town gets the road that we deserve. So that's why I'm here. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. What I was going to do was ask those on the panel very briefly to set out where they're coming from their point of view, and then throw it open to basically a Q&A. There is a clipboard going around. If you could add your details, and if possible, your email address to that, then we'll keep you posted on progress and on updates, and it will allow an improved communication for all of those people who care about this. But also, it's a petition, and we're collecting names to demonstrate how much support there is behind this project. So, having said all that, maybe I could hand over to you, Roger, to set out briefly from your point of view on the other side of the county boundary, just how important this project is. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. What's interesting, I know you're going to hate me for this, is the first thing I get is something about the railway, and then Matthew starts his speech and says, I'm all for a dual carriageway. So the meeting tonight really is about the dual carriageway and the road, etc. But how many people, just as a quick show of hands, how many people here are here for a railway or think a railway would be a good idea? Okay, I just wanted to. A good idea short term, I should have said, Matthew. And who thinks that a road or dual carriageway is the preferred priority? Okay, so that's fairly even. Okay. So what we have basically is a situation whereby dual carriageway in the A1307 through Linton as pinch point is a bit difficult. If we could somehow mitigate that, we just move on to Abington or something like that. So where I'm from is I want to look at the possibility of dual carriageway in the A1307 up to Horsley, and then maybe a new road that follows the Roman road towards the A11. Some of you may have seen that in the paper already. Who thinks that's not a bad idea? Not that many. So who would like to see the dual carriageway as it is at the moment? Following the same road. Okay, so we kind of don't know where we are at the moment. So that's pretty good because we don't know where we are either. And we need to start at that situation.
The opportunity for people to express the view that they are sympathetic, there be a bypass, but not along the line of the Roman road.
Well, that's a very good point, and that's why we're having this meeting tonight. So, would you like to elaborate a little bit on
Not
that?
at this stage, I'm here to listen to you first.
Okay.
Perhaps
My
you might
thoughts.
ask how many people aren't interested in it.
I'm sorry,
How
say again?
many are interested in having the road and the railway? What about those that are not interested in having the road and the railway?
Well, this is where I was going to come to as well, because there's a school of thought actually not to do anything. That if it gets as bad and worse and it just gets total chaotic, people will find other ways, and the A1307 will just stay as it is, become completely chaos mornings and evenings. It won't get any worse, it won't get any better, but then why should money be spent on it?
And the villages surrounding will get worse and worse and
That's
At the moment, what we have here, I mean, I'm in Haverhill here, in Suffolk, and I've been to a meeting here before, and I fully understand and appreciate where you come from. You want to get out of Haverhill into Cambridge or the A11, the A14, the M11, etc., and it is really difficult. And for those in the villages, it's also very difficult along that route. So, what's the answer? My answer is I'd like to see the dual carriageway to Horseheath because of a cost-effective point of view, and then looking at a new road along the line of the Roman road towards the A11. There's also talk, which I'm sure we're going to hear later, of maybe some development from the Four Wentways into Cambridge. Matthew's mentioned the City Deal. Great news for Cambridgeshire, but it's the Greater Cambridge City Deal. It's not the Greater Haverhill City Deal. It's not the Greater Linton City Deal. It's going to be for around Cambridge and getting people in from the outskirts of Cambridge via public transport into Cambridge. So, yes, it's great news for us, but it's not necessarily the answer we're all looking for. So that's where we are at the moment. I've aired a view. The gentleman over here has said, well, maybe there's different routes that should be considered. That's what we're here for tonight. That's why I'm here. I'm here to listen. I've aired my thoughts. I've had some positive feedback on it because what I've heard, people want something to be done. But what I think isn't always best, so I'll be told. We'll find out. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks. Maybe from the point of view of Cambridgeshire, Graham, would you be able to set out where you think that we're up to from the point of view of the...
Sorry.
You? Me? Yes. Asking Graham Newman from from the point of view of the Cambridgeshire and the left, I wonder whether you could set out where you think, especially with this news of this city deal that we've heard so much about, and the news this week that it's going to be funded, what that means, what the consequence, what the opportunities that brings, and what we can, how we can make the most of that.
Okay, so what we have, if you like, on the table in terms of local funding are potentially two things. We've got the city deal, which we've talked about, and it is about getting people in and around Cambridge, although it does present opportunities to start with around the core infrastructure routes, the core main routes into Cambridge. And it recognises the fact, and the LEP recognises the fact, that there will be, as we grow, significant movement between our market towns and Cambridge, and that's in both directions. That's people wanting to come into Cambridge, and it's also people wanting to come out and grow businesses in areas like Haverhill, and you know, you've got, I was here only last week, meeting with businesses operating in this area and planning to grow their business in this area. So we're talking about traffic and transport going in two directions. In addition to this, there is the local enterprise partnerships, strategic economic plans, which we are about to submit at week on Monday, at which we will be pitching for money. Now, our money takes us beyond the Cambridge city deal. It takes us across the whole LEP area. For those of you who don't know, it's a pretty large area. It takes us from Kings Lynn right the way through into Suffolk, into Bury St Edmunds. It takes us down to Upplesford, it takes us across to Royston, and then up into Rutland. So we're talking about a very large geographic area. We are putting a bid into government for a reasonably large amount of funding. However, that funding is going to have to be spread over a wide area. So if I come back, there is no doubt a clear recognition by the left that Haverhill has potential as both an area that needs to drive people into Cambridge and want to come into Cambridge but want to live in Haverhill, and there's a real opportunity to grow business in our area in Haverhill. So we are keen in principle to do things that support the roads and the rail infrastructure. Not to try and put a damper on things, there has to be a reality check, a little bit though. If I look at the amount of funding that we will have available as a LEP, it isn't going to cover initiatives like the dual. We just don't have enough money in our total budget to cover that sort of thing. So we need to find opportunities and budgets that bring in significantly more money that are coming into the city deal and into the SEP. So I just want to make that clear. However good the city deal is, and it is very good, however good a response we get to our SEP, and we won't know that till July, the sum total of that still won't solve some of the challenges that we have had articulated here this evening. That's, if you're comfortable, Matthew, I'll stop at that point.
Right, fantastic. So that's the, thanks very much for that, being clear about that. So the money in the LEP on the Cambridgeshire side, plus potential money from development, that can help. It can help get the project off the ground, but it's very clear that this is to do the project as a whole, we're talking about a large amount of money, and in part that's part of my job as well, to appeal to central government. But the problem is I can't take a project to central government unless it's a worked up project to say we need some money to unblock this. So in a sense, part of the whole purpose behind this is to get the views of people, to listen, and then to put a proposal together which we can then champion and try to make sure it gets funded. And talking of getting it funded and getting projects off the ground, I know a man who's very good at getting projects off the ground, because I've worked with him a lot in other parts of, especially other parts of West Suffolk. Graham Newman runs transport in Suffolk. He's responsible for improving roads like this. No doubt you'll also be bidding into the new pothole fund, because we've got a hell of a lot of those over this end.
We've done pretty well on just the basic allocation.
There you go, and we've done pretty well, apparently. But we can always push for more, can't we? Maybe you could set out where you think, what progress we can make.
Well, I mean, I think from the Suffolk viewpoint, I'm very keen to do what we can to foster the growth of Haverhill and support St Edmund's Bridge plan, which I think most people in the room will know that in Vision 2031 does envisage 3,500 new houses for the town over the next 15 to 20 years. And that, of course, is going to create so many more demands on the road network that we're talking about. Now, just one question. We had a bit of hands up just now. I don't mind if I ask Matthew. Are there people in the room who are interested in anything like a bus public transport solution? Just bearing in mind the success of the system in Cambridge, I believe, and I'm right in saying, that actually they've doubled the number of buses now. So there's a bus every 3 to 4 minutes in the rush hour from St Ives down into Cambridge and on into Addenbrooks. Does that have any appeal in this room? Because you see, that seems to me, something my predecessor in this job was very interested about, trying to make the case for the guided bus, which might be another public transport solution we could look into. Anyway, I think there was a meeting earlier on in the year. I couldn't come to that. Well, guided bus, yeah. It doesn't have to be a guided bus, but I mean it's a dedicated link, and it's very successful. That's the point I'm trying to.
What's the difference between a bus and a guided bus?
Well, a guided bus is on a dedicated track.
Okay.
That's what you've got between St Ives and Cambridge.
Graham, can I say something? What I think where there's a mistake is that this town exports hundreds of millions of pounds. It's not like the little towns north of Cambridge. There's really, to spend that money on a guided bus route where we need a proper two-way industrial traffic as well as commuting would not work.
Okay, well that's a view which we will recall. Anyway, there was a meeting earlier on in the year, which my colleague, Councillor Mary Evans, who's more local to this area than I am, she attended that. And as a consequence of that meeting, we've had a meeting with, our officers had a meeting with Cambridge County Council to look into a study. And the reason I introduced that topic was, where is this traffic actually going to? Nobody really knows. Is it trying to get to the N11? Is it trying to get down to Essex? Is it predominantly trying to get into Cambridge city centre and coming back at night? So we need to know that information really as to what is the best solution that we can plan. Now that work is going on. Suffolk would make a contribution to that work, but at this stage it's all study work. It's not delivering a new scheme. I think we've also got an entry, and we talked about this, in the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, which does deal with most of Suffolk. We've got a mention in the latest draft of that, same way as this grade I was talking about. We've got to submit these to government by the end of the month, I think. And we've got a mention in here about Haverhill and working with Greater Cambridgeshire to develop a scheme along the lines that Matthew was just talking about. But, you know, we're talking about significant sums of money here. And even in our strategic economic plan, we take all the money that we might get, in our case it's sort of shared between Norfolk and Suffolk. It doesn't leave an awful lot for £80 million schemes, as we've just been hearing about. So I think that probably we have to try and build that case for extra investment in this particular corridor, because clearly the need is there, the need is already there. In fact, there was a meeting in the town here. Do you remember the flood day we had? I think about the 14th of February. And I set out to come to that meeting, had to abandon it halfway because all the roads, some way or the other, getting into Haverhill were flooded. So I had to turn around and come home, which was a great shame. I think it was more around the railway day, but anyway, I think these issues were discussed. But I'm here just to confirm that we are absolutely committed to working with Cambridgeshire on this project and delivering some sort of improvements to the 1307 going forward. Is that fair? Some really?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. We do certainly improve it, and we are working with the Greater Cambridgeshire together. It's very much marched very towards our two counties.
We have to bear in mind that
We can't
three-quarters
hear
of
at
this
the back,
road is in
sorry.
Cambridgeshire.
Sorry, we can't hear it back. Could the lady repeat what you said?
Yes, Marie represents the New Anglia LEP, which is the Local Enterprise Partnership for Suffolk and Norfolk and the borders, and maybe you could...
I was just saying that, yes, we've included some improvements to Haverhill infrastructure within our strategic economic plan. I mean, our work in Greater Cambridge and Greater Peterborough, the local enterprise partnership, because obviously we recognise that the two counties and the crossover our borders, so we recognise it's very important to the area.
Fantastic. Right. Finally, from the front, before we go on to questions, and I'll take you first, sir.
Yeah.
The Councillor Bates from Cambridgeshire County Council.
Okay, well, let me start with thank you for inviting me. Just so you know where I come from actually from the north of Cambridgeshire, around the St Ives area. And my division actually crosses on some of it's in one side of the A14 and the other side of my division is on the other side of the A14, so I'm very accustomed to dealing with roads. I think Cambridge County Council has been developing, and it will go to our cabinet in 2 weeks' time, a long-term transport strategy. In that long-term strategy, that is for the whole of the county, there is an important part which is from Cambridge to Haverhill. It is a crucial part of the strategy because it actually is a corridor. I know I'm telling you exactly what you already know, but it is actually in our plans as a very important part. I'm very grateful thank you for Suffolk, because what we're going to be doing is joining together to a joint piece of work which takes things forward. And the next thing to say is, as far as I'm concerned at the moment, we have to look at all the options. There's nothing in and there's nothing out, because this is early days. We need to recognise the challenges, public transport, road, rail, and then anything else in between. So we do need to look at all the options. We do need to look at the economic case for those options. Some of them will be perhaps cheaper, some of them might not be. We need to look at all of them. Now, the transport strategy is very crucially linked to the local plan. The local plan in South Cambs is going to deliver on the housing and the economic growth with respect to where the jobs are, where the houses are. So those two need to come much closer together. Historically, 20 years ago, they sort of sat on somebody else's shelf, somebody over there didn't about where the houses were, and somebody over there looked at where the transport might be. We are absolutely determined, as both Roger knows, Graham knows, to work together. It's crucial that we all work together, because money will be an issue at some point. Therefore, if we all start to work together, we all start to put plans together, which include the MP and the MPs, then in fact you have a better case to put forward to whoever. We need to work with the LEP, Cambridge and Peterborough. We need to work with Anglia as well. So this is still early days. We need to look at all the options, all the costs that would bring, and the benefits, and build that case. And just before I sit down, I actually did open and cut the ribbon on the guided bus. Okay. A long history, which I don't think we're going over. But let me just give you one or two other projects, which you might just say, how interested are we in infrastructure? We are also committed to a new station. We have planning and granted a new station north of Cambridge. For those that live a little further north, we're also going to actually commit ourselves to a leading bypass. It is crucial for the infrastructure. So Haverhill to Cambridge is absolutely crucial as a corridor for transport.
Yeah, and just to quickly, I'm not going to keep standing up because I always think I'm but Graham's absolutely right. I chaired the A1307 steering group meeting, and we had the first major one in January last year, where things were raised about the A1307, the fact it wasn't getting the coverage it should, etc. There was work all throughout the year, and we actually got it into the city deals, one of two roads mentioned, that the A10 being the other one, and also the local transport strategy. So, you know, we've come an awful long way in actually a very short time to raise the profile of what's going on here. We want to keep this momentum going and have more structure as to where we want to go.
So apparently we've come a long way in a very short time, which is not what happens when you're on the A1307. We've seen the point of view from the different partners on the Cambridgeshire side and on the Suffolk side, and you know my view. What would be really good now would be to take questions and views from the floor. on the importance that you attach to it, questions around it, what options might be attractive, and anything else that you might want to ask. So,
well, listening to you people tonight, I think you ought to make changes to the government. Because if you can talking how you lot have been talking for the last, 10, 15 years, you're going to get nowhere. And the same as Linton. Whoever thought of doing Linton, they made one big bottom there. That's why you get so many accidents on the road. You spend a lot of money curving the road out to chain into Linton, it's still not wide enough. And you say you've done a lot of work, but you just made one big vessel. I've been driving on that road since 1986. And if you're not careful, this town's a dead town. Because nobody's coming into this town, but by Christ, if Barry Edmonds want it, or English want it, or any other town, they get it. Haverhill don't get nothing. We've got no industry coming in here, and like this young man said, you put in air balloon and you're at Cambridge, Haverhill and the A12. If we had her on all the way from Braintree to the A11, the amount of what's coming to this town would help a lot of things. It's all right you lot keep talking, doing all this, where all the money comes from. But by Christ, if you want to do it, I know you can do it. But you want to take this up to the government.
well, that's what I'm glad to hear from there is the amount of enthusiasm as well as the frustration. And certainly taking it to government is that is absolutely my job. But to take it to government, I can't just go and say, can we have a road?
No.
We need to have a case for the road, which is what we're trying to build and what this public meeting is all about.
I think for the landowners, they were very disappointed that there was no publicity about this meeting at all. It's only thanks to Sam, wherever he is in here, Sam Avenue. Otherwise, I would not have known about it at all. And I'm not the only landowner where you're trying to push this dual carriageway through.
Right.
In future, we would like much.
Okay, thanks very much. We did publicise it quite a lot. It was in all the local papers and on Radio Suffolk and on the internet. And in fact, there's quite a lot of people here, so that's quite a good sign. Sarah, you were...
No, sorry, I was just going to say it was extremely well publicised. Both the local papers had it, Haverhill UK had it, the Facebook page had it. It was all over the place. There is no possibility it wasn't well publicised.
Right. Anyway, we're all here, so that's a good start. So, right.
Just with I'm a resident of Farm Wisdom, actually. We've got a lot about long-term strategies. My main concern, and I'm sure concern for a lot of people here today, relates to the existing section.
Right.
And in fact, if you plot Cambridgeshire County Council's own accident record statistics, most of the accidents, and certainly most of the fatal accidents, have occurred on the dual carriageway sections or beginning and end of the
Right.
I've advocated for years a reduction in the speed limit on the A1307 to 50 miles an hour and taking out the dual carriageway. The Dean Road crossroads, how that can remain open beggars belief. The safe area, it's described by the County Council as a safe area between carriageways. 13 feet. You can barely put a mini into it. I escaped an accident here myself 2.5 years ago. I was in slow lane. I was being overtaken. Something came from Barlow to cross. Due amount of time, I didn't think that they were taking a risk. But by the time they got across to that intersection area, I had braked, and thank God I did brake, because the car that they overtaking me took that space that I had made later. They swerved and I was to the left. They hit the curb, then they went across the carriageway, backwards, and thank goodness nothing was coming in the opposite direction. There was another fatal accident waiting to happen. It's not on your radar. It's not on Cambridgeshire County Council radar. It is not a designated black spot. How can that possibly be?
So the safety issues are an absolutely critical part of the reason.
We want something done about the safety of the road now, not in 5 years' time or 10 years' time.
So the safety on the road is obviously a critical part of why we need to improve it. It is about access to the town, it's about the town's access to the dual carriageways, that we explained. And it's also about safety. Now the safest roads on the road network are dual carriageways and motorways, exactly, with the right on-flows and off-flows. So, and some of the most dangerous parts of roads, which I think you mentioned, are where dual carriageways go down and then dual carriageways expand, because people try to overtake on the last bit of dual carriageway before it comes down again. So one of the reasons that the road is dangerous is because of the small sections of dual carriageway. So that is why a dual carriageway is an answer to the safety issues too. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing short-term safety improvements as well. And Roger, do you want to talk about the short-term safety measures that have been taken and anything like that?
Sure. I'm chair of the steering group, and Jeff, obviously we know each other quite well through emails, if nothing else. And you brought it up a year ago about the Dean Road crossroads, and it's very well known. We all know about the problems there. There was a number of issues all the way along the stretch of the A1307. We did it from Bradenham all the way to the Suffolk border, and went to Cambridgeshire County Council with our issues. We did get responses back. Some were pretty unsatisfactory, some were okay, and not many satisfactory in as much as they disagreed with the steering group's view of things. And it's more to do with the fact that we drive and have experience of that road day in, day out, and when you just do a desktop scenario, it doesn't show the dangers that we all know are there. We've actually gone back with the results, also with what we think of their results, and we're waiting for them to come back on that. And the Dean Road crossroads is right up there on the priority. We also asked for the dual carriageways that's to be hatched, so they just become single carriageways. That was one of the things the steering group wanted. Cambridgeshire County Council didn't think that was a good idea either. And they also think that queuing in the evenings on both lanes is a good idea, although it frustrates everyone when you get overtaken and you're queuing on that inside lane. So it really is a question of you've got people with experience asking for something to be done and having to keep going back, and eventually we will get things done, but we have to keep going back. It's not the easiest thing in the world. I'm not going to say it's going to happen tomorrow, because it won't. These things never do. The fact is, these things should have been started 10, 12 years ago. In fact, they were started 10, 12 years ago, and it's taken this long to get this far, and since then the road's been getting worse and worse. So Jeff, I have every sympathy with what you're saying. I'm glad you brought it up. Short-term safety is obviously a priority. As a steering group, we can only point out what we think. Cambridgeshire County Council come back with what they think. We can go back to them again and keep going back. At the moment,
their records are wrong.
I know you keep saying that as well, and their cluster sites don't actually agree with our cluster sites. I agree with that.
I worked in the insurance industry for 27 years, and we work on proximate calls, and they put these accidents sometimes 30 yards away from the junction, when the proximate cause of the accident is the junction itself. And they say that the junction isn't dangerous.
Well, with the Dean Road, we actually looked at not only hatching the dual carriageway to make it single car, actually closing that entrance off, but that was dismissed as well.
Okay, there was a gentleman at the back, and then
Thank you. Stuart Miller, Chairman of Horsey Parish Council. I just wanted to speak for Horsey for a moment, and probably for a lot of the other villages along the road. The majority view, as you'll be unsurprised to hear from Horsey, is that they don't want dual carriageway bisecting the parish. We already have the A1307 that does that, and to have the additional noise and pollution from the dual carriageway, from what we hear, is not very popular. I think also you should correct your impression that the people at this meeting show the level of support. Roger asked us, the railway people and the supporters, that left, in my rough count, the majority who are not supporting it. I mean, maybe we should have a show of hands of people who are unsure or not supporting the dual carriageway.
yeah, I was going to Very good. Okay, no, we'll do it. If we do it, I was going to do it consistently.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of people that use that road are out of work at the moment. So, yes.
We are a rat run, not to Cambridge, not to the Asbury side, but to get people to the science park side. That is a big issue for us. But the other issue I want to ask or raise, I've been travelling along the A1307, the 1307, 60 years, and I can tell you it's not the road, it's what happens to the road when people get to Cambridge, because you just start queuing in Bainborough. Yes. More and more traffic coming in. Thought has to be given to what happens when the traffic, as it approaches Cambridge. It's all very well saying use the park and ride. The park and ride is not necessarily the answer to everybody. A lot of people who work at Hancock park and ride, which is great for them, but then it's full and people can't use it later on in the day. So you've got to think about what happens, you know, when we reach Cambridge. And
well, I just agree with you actually. I mean, all part of what the study is on those sort of issues. Okay, park and ride that is very successful in Cambridge. Okay, around the edges of Cambridge.
until it's full.
Until it's full, but we are extending, and we have extended the park and ride because it's popular. But it will be part of the study, and it will also be part of the strategy that we're looking at. Cambridge is a confined city. Okay, we all know that. It is a historical city. It's got a historical centre, and that's not going to change. Okay,
I hope not.
No, I think anybody who suggests it would I suspect, be well, which will be they do that hanging. I suspect possibly as I'm suggesting. So yes, we have to deal with Cambridge. Yes, it's all growth that we've all got, and it's not just towards Haverhill. It's actually all the other developments around Cambridge. We are very conscious of what that looks like, and that's why part of that is about some stations, railway stations. Part of that will be at that Royal Park and Ride. So it's not one solution. We need to look at lots of different solutions. Okay, so totally agree with what you've said, and all that is part of what we're looking at.
Fantastic. The gentleman at the front, and then the gentleman at the back.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for calling this meeting and for conducting it so efficiently against such a contentious background. Thank you very much indeed. If one wants to solve a problem, I think the first thing to do is to analyse it. And if we go back a little bit in time, we get back to about 1982, when the last major improvement to the A604, as it was then, and that was when the bypass around Portsmouth was constructed. Since then, a little bit has happened, but not very much. In the meantime, we have seen remorseless, unreal driveway growth in Haverhill. And we hear this evening that you are encouraging it. We hear there's going to be 3,500 or another figure, 4,500 new homes. As Oliver Cromwell might have said, I beg you, from the bowels of Christ, to think again that you might be mistaken. You haven't got the infrastructure here. So hold back a little bit. It's as daft as putting it in a sunset lens. You really must have the infrastructure, or at least the infrastructure plans and funded, and we're told it's not going to be funded. You really must have that in place before you go along with this unbridled growth. Please take that.
Well done. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the compliment. The meeting was entirely uncontentious, I thought, until you made that remark. The Vision 2031 document about the future of Haverhill, which proposes 3,500, is over a 20-year period. And that's the proposal on the table, and that's why it's so important to get the infrastructure right, and that's why the study is important, and why the momentum behind doing this is important. But we've got to do it in the right way, which is why it's so important to get the views of people and to consider all of the things that aren't necessarily thought of until you start asking people, which is always a good start. Tony?
what we really need is an integrated transport plan for Haverhill, not just a 1307, but to think about all the different methods of transporting people around the town and out of the town. Look at it in the whole, not just 1307. We need an integrated transport plan, full stop. And like the gentleman said there shouldn't be no more growth in it until we get that right in place first. It's absolutely ridiculous that we're putting people in a position of Linton where they can't get out to the A1307, that people can't get to work, they're just stuck out in traffic jams there. That come on, we need to sort it out. I'm a councillor, you're all councillors, we should really push things forward as soon as we can and get a proper plan together so that people chatting about it.
Very good. Well, I think that I sometimes, as a politician, get told we shouldn't just talk about things, we should do them. But talking about them is also part of doing them. Because if you do them without talking about them, by God, it's even worse. The lady there, and then Roger Andre at the back.
I drive around the A1307 every day, and most of the cars around me, I can tell sort of they're often going in a similar direction to me. I'm usually trying to go towards the M11, and sometimes that can be because I'm going along the A505, or maybe I'm going actually up to Huntingdon. I actually find that easier to go around that way. It's very difficult to get onto the A14 across the north of Cambridge, and it's easier to go round the western side of Cambridge on the M11. And so couldn't we try and link, or have a road going straight down to link up to the M11? There's a small M11 spur that comes off at Stump Cross, and actually link up down there. Lorries go down that way, and then there's a southerly route which also goes up the western side of Cambridge and on and beyond up that way. The reason I generally go that way is I also know the back ones that all travel through Horseheath and through all those villages, village fields, and through that way, and I sometimes take those ways when I go further north. But going south, there aren't the back ones, so you always end up on the A1307, and I think that's where a lot of the traffic actually ends up, is that you end up in traffic jams because there are no back ones that way, so you can't escape, and then people have to use the back ones going north because they just end up in the traffic jams, and so they use the back ones going north.
Yeah, I think that was very clearly put. We should certainly consider that, and I think you're very brave admitting that you use the crap runs given who's in the room. But of course it's a reality of life, which is the reason that you make the point very powerful. There's been a gentleman at the front who's had his hand up right since the start, and I'm very sorry for not coming to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm a professional road safety person, more than 10 years now, so I mean, regardless of whether it stays as it is or it changes, that's my office. That's where I work. So if you want to move my office around, that's fine. But my main concern, I think that's what we've heard here already, is the safety of the people on the road. Short-term engineering will change things, it's costly, I know. Is there anything available for people so that they can refresh and get up to date things on the road?
Yeah, well, certainly making safety improvements is an important part of it, John.
Sorry, I understood that and I understood the 59.5 minutes for a suggestion. I'm very content to take your issues back about the safety issues, okay, which perhaps are more short-term, okay, and what we're talking about is I'm quite content to take those issues back on your behalf to Cambridge County Council. Don't worry, Roger will batter me down until I do something. So do not worry, you've got a good councillor that has battered me down my door frequently on those sort of issues.
I'd just like to point out that I work for Cambridge County.
I know you do. I didn't want to say.
Okay, there's a whole host of people who'd like to speak, so I'm going to take the gentleman at the back, then the lady here, and then you, sir, and Esther. I know that you want to come in, so that's 4, and then I hope I can remember to do it in that order and not upset anybody else. That's it.
Yeah, I live in Haverhill, but I work in Royston. Have done for the last 15 years, and I've used the road every single day. I've done a lot of observations on the road in that time, and generally coming out of Haverhill every day, you sometimes get stuck behind a cleaner lorry, sometimes it's a car who's driving at 30 miles an hour, sometimes the traffic's free flowing. And if you come out of Haverhill at 60 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, you look in your rear view mirrors, there's no congestion behind you. And when you hit that bit of chalk carriageway, everything's free flowing. If you're stuck behind somebody coming out of Haverhill and you look in your rear view mirrors, there's a line of traffic as far as back as you can see. The idiot at the back has got a 1 mile stretch of dual carriageway to get in front of the Kalina lorry before he hits the next bottleneck, which is Linton. Now, I'll then overtake myself, 65, 70 miles an hour, and I'll look in my rear view mirror and there'll be somebody an inch off my bumper, travelling along that bit of dual carriageway before we then hit the Linton bottleneck. Now, there's two issues we're looking at. Basically, we've got the safety issue that we're looking at, which is created by the single lane, then dual carriageway, and you hit the nail on the head right at the start when you said that. So if we was to make it all single lane carriageway, we would stop people overtaking. But then we've got the congestion problem. So as Haverhill keeps expanding, we have to do something about the congestion, but we also have to do something about the safety measures as well. Now, I've been travelling along that road, like I said, every single day. I haven't seen a speed camera van along that road for the last year. You used to see them regularly, especially in the dips along that dual carriageway. And that would slow people down, including myself. Because I am a speedo wanderer, I have to admit, from time to time. But when I know that there's a possibility of a van there, okay, or a speed camera, I'm not going to do 80 miles an hour along that bit of dual carriageway. Because the deterrent is there.
I think that's very honest of you. And of course, nobody else speeds. But the point about speed cameras and temporary speed cameras, because often speed cameras work best when they are there, when they're first there, and then people get used to them. That is an issue that we should absolutely take away.
I think the main aim is to keep the traffic free flowing. Right. The moment you've got a road that keeps slowing down and speeding up, it's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. And
that's everything we're talking about tonight.
We're talking about having stretches of dual carriageway and stretches of...
I'm so pleased it's happening in Haverhill and not in Linton. However, really, the villages downstream between Haverhill and Cambridge are the ones who are paying the price for your success. And I've always thought that before you did all of this expanding and your industry and all the rest of it, you really need some way that Haverhill traffic can access the A14 from your side and the M11, possibly by the A120, which would of course help us very much downstream. We've now come up with this other view of another road coming from Haverhill across to the A11, which we don't know the route. I think it sounds a pretty good idea. I'd like to know the route. I'd also like to know how it's being paid for. Are we in Cambridge and around the villages again going to be paying for a road by development instead of Haverhill paying for roads and paying for the access to motorways?
I'm Esther Cornell, I'm from Linton, and I know every fact and figure of the campaign for the last 13 years. The government's had on 1307. And I think we're here today, more's happened in the last year. I mean, we have a cabinet member for Cambridge County Council that knows where the A1307 is. 10 years ago, we did not have that. It was just the bit that linked the A14 to Cambridge, the Huntingdon Road. Okay, so that is quite amazing in itself. We are priority in fact. Okay, I was phoning up Cambridge County Council saying we're one of the busiest roads. Oh my God, we'll just cut the full road down towards Haverhill. We had government departments that emailed us back saying Haverhill was in Cambridgeshire. Okay, we have moved on in great big steps. With respect to accidents and the safety issue, there is time this road has seen 75% of the county council budgets. Okay. We've had massive improvements because we've ended up with a road that's kind of, it was a rural road and it's rolling road. We've still got those problems. The only way to make the A1307 safer in its present form would be to close off every junction and not have access to many of the villages. So, you know, we have had it. There are problems. The Dean Road Cross Road was supposed to be closed off, but it would have created a massive congestion problem. So that wasn't going to be progressed. And actually it's the police that block the roads, not the county council. The growth issue. I was the person that sat at the planning inspectorate saying, you cannot grow Haverhill, they have no infrastructure. And it's the planning inspectorate each time they said, actually, you know, we're okay, you know, we need these houses, the government needs these houses, we need business growth. We'll sort the road out later. So that comes from the actual planning inspectorate, and I've gone over it more and more times. The fact of the matter, the muck-up at Linton is Linton Village College. It's a secondary school for all the area that no one could get in or out of. Okay, so in that respect, it takes all the children. We've got a secondary school that has a 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway right next to it. You know, there are basic infrastructure problems. There's access problems for all the villages. There's access problems for all the businesses in Haverhill. Okay, Haverhill has a problem, the villages, we all have a problem. Okay, we have a path of perhaps a road, that's got to be sided, but the fact we're all here talking about it, we're not talking about it like we've done for the last 12 years. We're actually starting to formulate a solution. We have the people here, people understand, Suffolk and Cambridgeshire are talking, and that has taken an awful long. So I think now we need to look, consider the views of 40, which is split by the road, Linton, which is split by the road. You know, in the past, bypass meant go through the middle, okay, for Cambridgeshire County Council. You know, now we've got to look and formulate a solution that A, allows more growth in Haverhill, B, perhaps allows growth in some other areas. Linton is not allowed any growth because the A1307 access is such a problem, so, you know, it's a problem. But we need to actually look at what we all need and allow people to formulate a solution.
Thanks, that was very well argued. Roger, the Mayor of Haverhill.
I'm afraid suggestions to resist the growth of Haverhill are in vain. People want to live in Haverhill. Businesses want to operate in Haverhill. Indeed, next Wednesday I've been invited to open an entirely new high-tech production line at Hancock. People want to come here, they want to do business here, and the science park is evidence of part of that response to business. Business needs the road. A guided busway around won't serve business, but the immediate future that we need. And we need to be quite clear, as a town councillor, I believe the prosperity of Haverhill relies on our growth, and that growth will occur.
Julian, you were looking to speak.
Julian for Haverhill Cangle. Roger's dead right, it's growth. You've got no choice, not just in Haverhill. I looked after Brandon when the UKIP councillor there was ill. They've got the same problem, a couple of thousand houses coming in, no decent roads. But Haverhill is uniquely disadvantaged. It is so big, it's so vibrant, a young demographic. We do not have enough industry. Talking to a woman at one of the meetings at Linton, she said, if only you had a decent road, I'd move my factory up from Saffron Walden. There'll be a lot of people like that, and if we want the industry to come, we've got to have a road, as Roger said. Now, it looks like Cambridge is going to be in the driving seat. Sorry, Graham, it's true. They're going to be pushing in most of the money. The man who pays the piper. What worries me is that they will look on Haverhill as a source of bodies, not as a place to actually push our industry. I'd like them to assure us that they are going to actually say Haverhill is an equal partner with Cambridge. We want the high-tech industry. You can reduce the traffic on your new road. You're going to have to build a new road first, I'm afraid, but it will not be as busy as you think if you make us grow our industry. And to that end, I hope we stop planning to build houses on industrial land.
Right, so that's, thanks very much. What I want to do now is go to, we've had an awful lot of views expressed. We've had positive views, we've had views about specific areas on the route. There's clearly the safety concerns. My sense from this meeting is that if we can get it right, if we can get the route right, then there is a case for and support for the road. But it is all about listening to people about the different concerns. Some of the concerns, despite having worked on this for years, I hadn't heard before tonight. I found this extremely valuable. But I think from the point of view of all of those who have a responsibility to respond to the challenges of growth that both Julian and Roger have just expressed so clearly, it's incumbent on us to do the analytical work, or rather it's incumbent on you lot, to do the analytical work and to listen to views. So what I propose to do is say that, from this meeting, which I've found to be very constructive, even with people putting forthright points about about particular issues or about the big issue of what needs to happen, that we continue this dialogue with the whole of South Cambridge, or the whole of the Haverhill corridor, as they call it in Cambridge. I think it's actually the Cambridge corridor from Haverhill. And make sure that all of the various points are taken on board in this journey. But what I'd like to do is take away from this well, maybe we should at this stage, take a show of hands of whether there is broad support for further progress towards trying to solve the problem, to try to improve the safety record and the road, so long as we continue to listen and to do the work and to get both the route right and how it interacts with all of the wider issues. Because the point that I was most struck by was the point that this has to be joined up with development. It has to be joined up with, people do need houses, and the growth will happen, and having that joined up to transport is really important. So if we could take a broad show of hands.
Can we have an amendment, a very simple one, Chairman, that you say, your paper is exactly the same, but it should be explicitly that at this stage, all the options, road, rail,
yes,
busway, should be considered.
Right, that all the options, including all the routes, should be considered, and the work should take place, and that people should work together in order to try to take this forward, and then we should continue to have meetings like this, both here and elsewhere, and to keep people informed and to take views on board on the way forward. So if there's supporters for that, I'd like to see a show of hands, and opponents of that proposition. Okay, very good. So we've got a way. I think we've got a way forward. I wonder whether Graham, from the point of view of the net, you can sum up, and Roger, from the point of view of you who've done so much work on this, if you could sum up, that would be terrific. And then what I can promise you is that I have no poll power in this area, but I have the convening power of a megaphone, and I, and both in London and locally, to be able to call these sorts of events and to pick up the phone to whoever's necessary. And what I can promise you is that I will be working to solve this problem, but in a way that takes into account the concerns of those who have understandable and perfectly reasonable concerns about making sure that not only we solve this problem, but we solve it in the right way. Great.
Thank you. I mean, from my perspective, it's been really interesting. I absolutely support Matthew in the sense that what I've found since coming into working with the electrical industry is it is about working together. And the more we work together, the more pressure we're able to apply, the more likely we are to get a consensus around a plan. And it's actually only by having a consensus that we drive things forward. Where we don't, they just sit on the block. And what I've found so far is the things we have moved forward is where there's been consensus. To that point, I would just say to one of the comments that we made earlier in the discussion, from a left perspective, we don't see Haverhill as one-way traffic, people just coming to Cambridge. We see it as two-way traffic. I know with New Anglia we have already invested our funds into helping grow business around the research park. We've supported that jointly, and I think from both lefts we see Haverhill both inevitably as a place where people are going to want to live and commute to other places, but also a place that's going to build its own economy and keep driving growth from that sense. And I very much look forward to Matthew to working with you and partners in trying to drive this debate forward, because it's clearly necessary that we come up with a strong solution to the problem. Roger.
Matthew always knows I'm going to say what I think. That's probably why he made me start off. I was here tonight to listen, and of course everything's going to be considered. The railway, the guided bus, a new road, etc. For for me, listening to everything, at this moment in time, I still think a new road, it's still an open mind, but I think that's what is required. The thing that may have changed with me is that through basic cost effectiveness, I was thinking of a dual carriageway up to Hallsheath, and then if you actually look on a map where Hallsheath is and then 4 webways, it's almost a straight line across, well away from the Roman road, but it might be in the vicinity. But with what has been said here, you know, I think we might be able to go one better, and I think we should be looking maybe at a whole new road coming out of Haverhill and taking the right path. I still think it's sort of that way, that sort of area, but maybe not starting at Hallsheath. Maybe there's something we can do for people Parliament as well. As I say, I was looking at it from a cost-effective point of view. I think with what's been said here, there's enough vigour and power and robustness that we can put a much better case maybe for something different. So I'm really pleased at what's come tonight. I haven't closed my ears and mind up to a railway or a guided bus, but I think the problem here is getting the people of Haverhill to 4 webways, and because I know that the majority of people then go north or south. The minority of people go into Cambridge, and if we have something at 4 webways to then take people on into Cambridge or we improve the corridor, that does that bit, but it's the expansion of Haverhill and the vehicles having to get in and out of Haverhill that I think is the real big problem. And I don't believe that the guided bus and the railway will solve the problem the way a road will at this moment in time. I will still listen, but that's where I am at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your time, for your very constructive and